What are you glad isn't cool anymore? I'm 63. I'm 8 years into my gaff stage. I see very few people now. There's only 2 couples we're still friendly with and they live in other states. We don't go out socially and never go to any gatherings other than the mandatory family events. Remember when being grounded sucked when we were younger? Now it's my preferred state. Imagine life with next to no drama from others. Or having to listen and tolerate some idiots. See, boss. Bullshit. I say next to no drama solely because of mandatory family gatherings which are dreadful. I was a child back then, and I couldn't wait until I was finally old enough to have a perm and douse my hair with hairspray every morning, like my older sister. She had her own sink in her bedroom, and she had some stuff there I loved, most of all the perfume bottle with the squeezing ball and, of course, the hairspray. I shared a room with her for 1/2 year, and when she had afternoon classes, I sometimes used the opportunity to smell the perfume. Once, I also tried the hairspray, and I was disappointed that when I sprayed that stuff on my hair, it didn't look shinier at all. But the hissing sound and the smell, those 2 things I associated with sophistication and being an adult. Fast forward a few decades, and we found a tape. A home video my maternal grandfather had made with a borrowed camera. The home movie was fascinating. Everybody still so young, and those clothes. All females seemed to be wearing sweaters that were 2 sizes too large, and while many of them had perms, but one of my aunts had a perm that was so frizzy I couldn't trust my eyes. I remember that mustaches, bacon, and llamas everything were the big things when I was in high school. The homeschool kids at my church latched onto that crap and their whole personalities revolved around being quirky and liking those things. They haven't changed, but at least they keep it contained within the families they started at 19 after 1 year at Bible college. I actually learned the definition of the word fad from the mustache trend. I was probably 9 or 10. At the Justice checkout with my family, I picked up a mustache rubber bracelet, and my brother said, "Duck, I can't stand this fad." Asked what it meant, he explained. I replied with "Mustaches are forever. I will always love mustaches." He rolled his eyes and said something to the effect of "Yeah, okay, get back to me in a few years on that." I'm 20 now and that interaction is laser etched on the inside of my skull. I'm rewatching The Wire and I just finished the part where Detective Herrick is sitting in the car down in the projects and one of the corner boys walks past with his hat sideways. Herrick yells out the window, "Hey, where do you all get those hats with the bills facing to the side?" "I can only find the ones with the bill facing forward," kid responds without even second guessing what he just got asked. "Nah, man, they the same hat. You just turn them to the side." Fucking lost it. So good. The scene. These signs will be regarded and sold ironically as kitsch in decades to come, because they fill the same market niche as what we consider kitsch now used to fill. Designs targeted at consumers who used to be poor, and are just on their way to middle class, who finally have a bit of disposable income for the first time in their lives, but their aesthetic taste hasn't caught up yet, and might never. Love spell from Victoria's Secret. Like seriously, I hate it now. Growing up, the girls that went to school with me would bathe themselves in it, especially during things like prom, winter formals, and any other events the school had. I got made fun of because I would wear other smells like cucumber, melon and sweet pea. Yes, I realize sweet pea smells like old lady. However, anything else was better than smelling a sea of fucking love spell. It also got me brownie points with the teachers. The older ones liked the smell and the younger ones shared my opinion on it. One day after gym, I was changing clothes, had just put deodorant on, and was about to spray a little cucumber melon on. One of the girls that regularly picked on me decided that today was the day. She caught me off guard and sprayed love spell directly into my face while screaming, "There, now you won't smell like old lady ass," and laughing. All the other girls was laughing too until they realized I was coughing and was having trouble breathing. She had literally sprayed it down my mouth and nose. One of the girls panicked and went and got the teacher. The teacher took me to the office and called my parents. By the time my parents got to the school I was fine, but they decided to send me home anyways. The next day letters was sent home to other parents letting them know that Love Spell was banned from school because it was triggering kids with asthma. I don't have asthma, but I guess the teachers seen the incident as the perfect time to finally get rid of the smell once and for all. Dude, man, when I was in school it was cool to not do anything. Man, that was a hard rut to drag myself out of in college. Fortunately, I chose a co-op internship program which helped set up my career, but I regret not joining many clubs activities because doing things was considered uncool. I think 21 Jump Street laid it out perfectly. The older kids were so confused about the newer high school kids actually giving a shit. Too accurate. Honestly, I'll take all of these back if I never have to see another influencer again. Sure, back in the day you had your Paris Hiltons and your Kim Kardashians, but they were easily ignored and only took up a niche portion of culture. Now, influencers have basically dominated every aspect of pop culture. Game culture is so dominated by streaming and YouTubers that meeting someone who likes video games means something completely different from, say, 2007 or so. To be fair to the Flintstones, it wasn't a children's program. It was a primetime animated satirical sitcom, geared for all audiences. It was light years ahead of its time, as it's essentially a prototype for The Simpsons, and every show that followed after that. Smoking was such a norm in the 60s, when the show was in production, that it would have been a little weird to have an all non-smoking cast. Additionally, the 60s were a transitional point in TV advertising. The prior norm, carried over from radio, was for a single company to financially sponsor a program, in exchange for having their name or product featured in some way, and some creative control over the program. The new norm was to sell advertising blocks in between segments of a program, like in a newspaper, but this wasn't the standard until about the mid-60s. So while it's weird today, a cigarette brand, any product really, being product placed was pretty normal in 1960. Subtly varied wildly. The Flintstones association with children's programming came in the 70s and 80s, long after production ended, when TV networks stuck it in the morning cartoon lineup because it's an animated show and those are for kids. I remember back in the 7th grade, one of my classes had a guest and she was having us do various exercises to get us used to feeling dumb in front of others. She had a group of girls at the front and told them to audibly imitate things you could find at a park. What made this exercise so memorable was that not only did she call them out for not sounding exactly like what they were trying to imitate, but she completely blew us off when we told her that the last girl in the group was mute. The guest tried so hard to get her to speak that the girl collapsed into a weeping ball right where she stood. So where was the teacher in all of this? We had to go get her because she fucked off to do something else. Introvert with RBF here. Raised by evangelical Christians. As if I didn't get enough shit at school, Sundays I had to hear how I wasn't filled with the Holy Spirit. Saturday should have been a respite, but my grandmother lived with us, and couldn't understand that I just liked to be alone with the door shut sometimes. She always came in to ask if I was grumpy, and if I'm not grumpy, why did I have my door shut, and why do I want to by myself? It must be because I'm grumpy. Cue me getting upset, and you can fill in the rest. Girlfriend's brother was one of these kids. Intervention got him out of his shell and became troublesome in class. Eventually there was an intervention to address his disruptive behavior, and as her father tells it, her mother literally said in a parent-teacher conference, "You people wanted him out of his shell, he's your problem, you deal with it." I can only imagine the party they had when he left. Yeah, I hear that. When I went to school, this was the local education trend to turn as much as possible into group work, and instead of typical lines of desks were arranged in rectangular groups of 8, like little boardroom desks. It was like the whole curriculum was designed by 100% extrovert person who considered introversion a character flaw that needed to be fixed. Extroversion was considering far superior to introversion. I imagine and hope that has now changed somewhat. It was a popular theme or punchline in comedy for several generations, but during the time that Gen X became the primary consumer demographic for entertainment, marriage became less of a rite of passage into society and more of a personal decision, and at the same time, divorce became less of a stigma because it had been increasing since the 50s. You can actually thank the boomers for paving the way on that one. When you had the option to get out of a bad marriage if you wanted to, I hate my wife became less relatable. As a fellow child of the 90s who has worked in schools as an adult, it has been very refreshing to see the change in culture when it comes to things like who is popular and how bullying is viewed. Everything's not perfect, obviously, and there are other areas where my era had it way better, but it seems like the kids who are popular these days are the kids who are generally just well-adjusted people who are easy to get along with. The mean girl, asshole jock types are not tolerated the way they used to be. Yup, I graduated high school 10 years ago and even then popular kids were basically extremely likable social butterflies who would hang out with absolutely anyone, even the dweebs, but also had athletic and academic ability going for them. Kids weren't really bullied per se. If they really were weird and didn't fit and they would be just ignored and left alone by most kids. It was jarring to see how much this had differed from what parents and older relatives had been expecting me to see. Bullies are more unaccountable than ever, and use social media to bully people into killing themselves. Back in the 90s you could just beat the fuck out of a bully a couple of times in the school parking lot and they'd get the message. Being super passive-aggressive when you bully people doesn't make it not bullying, and shitting on people for telling you off for it is not justice. I had a house staged, starting from empty, to try and sell it a couple of years ago, and the person doing our staging brought in all these little kitschy accoutrements and stuff, and the one that I still find hilarious was this framed piece of burlap or faux burlap that just was chicken, picture of a chicken, 100% premium. It was one of those things that probably set a tone if you didn't look too hard at it, but read totally gawky and stupid if you stopped to consider it. Edit, found a photo on a listing site. I forgot about the horrible typography and misplaced % sign, too. In the early 2000s, I worked at a sandwich place across the street from a music venue. When ICP, or anyone from their label, Associated Acts, played, it was the absolute worst nights. Their fans were by far the rudest. They intentionally left messes, and they would do shit for their own amusement. I still don't care for them all these years later. They're sheep in wolf's clothing with terrible taste in music. In Los Angeles in the early 90s they were exclusively post-surf boots until a couple of the cheerleaders at my high school started wearing them after practice. By the time I graduated in '97, I'm pretty sure every girl in the school had a pair, but they still weren't used for just walking around town. I never did understand how they became a fashion statement. Voice teacher here. If you don't like your vocal fry, you can definitely work on using it less. An exercise to try: get a straw and blow bubbles into a glass of water, about half full. Practice blowing the bubbles so that they reach the rim of the glass, but not so much that they spill over the edge. Do this for about a minute. Feel free to take breaths whenever you need them. Once you've got the hang of it, try humming a song while blowing the bubbles. I know this sounds really silly, but go with me lol. I'd go for something easy to remember and around a minute long. Your country's national anthem is probably a good choice. Remember to take breaths, and if you get lightheaded, take a break. The bubbles should stay right around the rim of the glass. Either get to the song's natural stopping point or do the exercise for around a minute. At that point, it should be a lot easier to speak without fry. If it works for you, you can practice this exercise as often as you want. I'd also recommend finding a speech therapist or even a voice teacher if singing is something you enjoy. Both will be able to help you with breath support and other technical stuff. I ran hard with a Juggalo crowd from 98-12. We stayed overnight in front of concert venues, had tons of weed-fueled parties, and lots of picnics in the park. We were a bunch of young degenerates pissed off at the world. I never got in trouble. I only painted my face for 2 shows, but I dressed the part the whole time. My lifestyle was the main source of tension between my father and I. I'm thankful I took off my hatchman charm before he died so he could see that I was ready to move on from the lifestyle. That being said, I have been to 2 shows in the past decade and didn't regret either. I'm still in Facebook touch with many of my hammies, a cringy term I still use for that group of friends. ICP announced they will start a farewell tour next year and my wife knows I'm going to a show on that tour. I've probably seen them in concert 50 times so a farewell tour is a must. I'm proud of my juggalo years. I'm proud to still identify as a juggalo. I'm damn proud to have never gotten caught up in anything permanent as a result of my time as a clown. With all that being said, October is coming up, the season of the pumpkin. Best believe there's going to be some spooky music in my earbuds. A lot of people really miss the point of that. The idea was the person you nominated was supposed to donate money to charity or pour a bucket of ice water over their head as a forfeit. So many people just didn't get it and thought it was just pouring water over themselves. A lot took it way too far as well, but unfortunately, something that was a good idea and supposed to raise money for charities, just fell flat and became a really annoying trend. One which, like you, I am so glad ended. Side note, the neck nomination thing where people drank was also supposed to be a way of raising money, not that I think anyone got the point of that. But Patrick Stewart did an neck nomination which everyone said was crap. Fact is they didn't get it. He didn't down a stupid amount of booze or anything. He actually donated money to charity and people slated him for it. Idiots. Anyway, sorry to hijack you post like this. Just the whole ice bucket challenge fad and neck nomination challenge fads just really missed the point and it used to bug me so much. I would say hating school but it's still prevalent. People don't get bullied as directly for liking school or being nerds, at least from what I've seen, but unfortunately plenty of kids still hate education and knowledge. This might be controversial to those that do hate education, but what they don't know is that their problem isn't with learning something new. It's about how they're learning and what they're learning. I've seen plenty of stoners who absolutely despise school just sit and watch documentary after documentary and can name the complete chemical composition of like 25 different drugs. But too many people think it's cool to hate school. Newsflash, it's not. Instead hate your school board. The heroin chic/white model bodies and the lack of diverse casts in films. Media. It's nice to see a variety of sizes represented in media and ads, from skinny to plush. Also, it seems like there is a lot more diversity in ads and in Hollywood. I remember being really sad when my mixed brother would try to change his hair to blend in with our very white community. Now there are dudes who look like him playing superheroes in movies and in the ads. I wish he'd had more of that when we were little. I'm not like other girls' trend. I understand that in our society women get shit on regardless, but I don't think we should be bringing each other down in order to seem more appealing. Being one of the boys doesn't make you better than every other girl on the planet. Do you actually not like feminine things or have you been conditioned to hate those things? I promise you the people who make fun of these things you enjoy are not worth sticking around. Cringe culture is dead. Like what you like, just don't be an elitist dick about it. Over-sexualizing everything. I would argue while it can still be somewhat common at times, it ain't rampantly disgusting while the masses believed it to be cool. Remember Girls Gone Wild commercials? Or teenage Disney stars being not so subtly sexualized? Emma Watson being sexualized before 18? It was all commonplace and cool. Pink was a brand known for selling sexy stuff to teenage girls and advertising for it, and that was cool. We all accepted it. Now it feels like it's finally on its way out. Smoking. At least I don't think it's as cool as it was when I was a kid. I started smoking when I was about 11, and it was a pretty common thing back then. It was really no effort to buy cigarettes. We knew where we could easily get them. We would meet on recess or after school to smoke together. I've noticed that kids nowadays are much more into healthy lifestyle, and I've even seen once or twice kids covering their faces and shaming smokers in public. But maybe on the other hand I'm not seeing kids smoking cause they're hiding like I used to at their age.